Hey, it's Charyn Harris. Check out a sneak peek of my interview with Jacklyn Sanchez, aka Jackie Boom, audio engineer, artist, producer extraordinaire. Hear it in its entirety on SiriusXM's Studio 54 Radio. Hey, welcome to another exciting episode of the Charyn Harris Experience here on SiriusXM's Studio 54 Radio. Today's guest is someone that I hold very near and dear to my heart because not only do I know her, I have worked with her. She is a musician, a fabulous musician at that. But what's more intriguing is that she is a woman in tech, an audio engineer, and award-winning, just fabulous, just burning up the ranks. And I'm just really excited to have you here. Jackie Boom, aka Jackie Sanchez, aka Jackie Boom. How are you?
Hi, Charyn. Thank you so much. Every time I do the intros, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, what are they going to say?
That's true.
Yeah, you know what? And it's kind of, we work and we don't always attach what we're doing as, because we're just doing what we do. So we don't necessarily look at it as, oh, wow, I'm doing this or doing that. I came into music just like I just like music. I'm a female musician. And then I look one day and I go, whoa, this is what I've done over the course of my career. And, and you've done some amazing things as well. And, and I know I was thinking about this as I was coming on the show this morning, how, so many of our guests have come through Berklee.
Oh, really?
OMG. I mean, I don't know what it's about.
I think, well, one, to speak on Berklee, like Berklee, I think attracts a very specific type of person. It's not just the education. I think most of my closest friends that are in the industry that I've been working with for the past 12 years have been through Berklee. I went to University of Miami as well, and I literally, industry-wise, have only working with, I made 2 friends. Whereas Berklee, it's been this massive network of people that are genuine friends, but genuine industry colleagues as well. So Berklee's a special place. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's in the water, but they got something. They know who their people are, which are people that are really committed and love music, and that, regular music schools usually are missing something in terms of what it takes to really thrive in this industry and stay committed. Because going back to what you just said about the intros, it's sometimes you're in the trenches when a lot of these things that are accomplishments or recognition, you're in the trenches. I think I was leaving a gig for one artist we were both working with to go to the ceremony, and then literally the next to come back to the tour. So
right. Yeah, it's you're in the thick of things and your work doesn't stop.
No.
You don't get to go. You're just okay, well, this is happening. Oh, I have to go to this day. And whatever happens that day, I don't really get a chance to sit in it and, for too long, because reality kicks in my role that I've got to jump back into this.
Exactly.
And that is something that's very real in the music industry that I think is sometimes overlooked.
Well, I think because on the surface it looks really shiny and great. I always talk about tours. My family thinks touring is the funnest thing, and I've learned it's one of the most gruesome, brutal things. Anytime you see a moment of joy in my social media story, it's because that is probably the only little break we get to do it. You know what I mean? I'm so it looks super fun because it's probably the only fun we're forcing ourselves to have. What is that? Part of the requirement.
I know. It's why? And then one day I was why am I doing this to myself?
I mean, and then going to my studio engineering, I go to therapy. Therapy is a big part of my life, but I never forget one of my therapists that I worked with for 4 years. In the beginning, I would come, I got out of a session at 6 a.m. and therapy was at 10. So it was kind of I'm gonna just take a quick nap at the studio and then go to therapy since I'm done with the session. I walk in, I'm yeah, I just worked 18 hours. I've I'm running on 3 hours of sleep. And she was literally like, I think I think you guys are all crazy. I think you're all crazy. Like, and this is a therapist. And I was like, wow, I guess that technically does sound very crazy.
There's a norm that we get in the music industry, but you're absolutely right. And, you know, I talk about a lot of music on here. I talk about a lot of, I get a lot of artists on here because, you know, I do a lot in dance music on this podcast. But what I found so interesting about you is like the ears that you have to develop to do what you do. And, you know, and you're in mainstream, and of course everything changes in terms of music and how we listen to it, and you have to mix with that in mind, and you have to be kind of like a little bit sane when you're doing it. But
no. So like going back to sane and not saying, maybe not the best words, if I'm being gentle with it, but I feel like I get to talk how I want because I do the work. I go to therapy and stuff. But the ears, with the ears and the tech as an engineer, even when I've been on the road, it's like the engineer role is such a like balanced role of like being the responsible one, but then you're still like a part of the band. Because I do find that in the studio, even or in live settings, like in the end, part of I think what has helped me in my career is that I love and care about the music I work on. I've learned over time, I'm very blessed and realize it's not always the case, but I've gotten to work I could say like 90% of everything I've ever worked on, I've enjoyed, right? I can't say like, oh, I've got stuck recording all these artists that I don't enjoy their music. Like, nah, it's been music that I genuinely either loved for many years and got the chance to work on with them in the present, or just very talented people. But the engineer role is still kind of like, you still have to, you're also like the people don't always realize you're helping keep the glue of happening, like whether it's the studio flow or encouraging breaks or not. Like it's a very nurturing role. It's a service industry, right? Like it's a service to the artist, service to the audience. Yes. It's a service job. And so being that it's a service job, you're making sure the experience is good for whatever the goal is. And so that requires being responsible, even though you also are chill and know how to like go with the flow, because creativity is also a flow state thing. So as much as people that are not creatives or outsiders may look at it like, wow, you guys are crazy. It's kind of like, no, because I'm a creative, I understand that once you get that inspiration, it's like you have to execute it, right? Like it's either, and especially in the studio, like if creativity sparks you at 3 a.m., sometimes finishing that idea means your sleep schedule is going to be turned off. So understanding like that music and creation is sometimes a flow state for artists, for many people, is why I think I can tolerate the craziness of like what maybe pushing our bodies, pushing our schedules, all of those things. I think with time, when there's a chance for like a little more structure, it's great. But even I myself have been guilty where like an idea pops up at 3 a.m, even though I'm exhausted and ready to go to bed. But that idea, and I'm like, oh, I'll just lay it down quickly. And then 4 hours later, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to sleep as the sun's rising. But it was worth it because I got to complete an idea that came to me. So I think that's an important reason or explanation maybe to people listening of like why it's definitely a labor of love. There are times where I'm like, there's no way we would do the things we do if we didn't love making music, you know?
Right. But and you guys are the last rite of passage, basically, besides mastering. But you're pretty much the last rite of passage for sound before it goes to commercial consumption. So it's a really important role.
Mixing, and, you know, it's an interesting time we're in, you know, considering AI. Also, the biggest one outside of AI is also like producers and engineers. Our roles have really melded, like they're kind of morphed into, a lot of producers can mix now, and then a lot of engineers are also producers because of the technology. Like if you think before with analog, like you needed a specific engineer because you were using pieces of gear to like execute the recording, and then mixing it, you had to use that equipment. Whereas nowadays everything is more accessible. People have access to those things. So it is like the final stage, but even now the roles are still kind of merged, because I know there are some top producers that will mix some of their records, because that are like kind of like producers and engineers that add a lot to the final stages of the production. But you're right, the mixing and the mastering is kind of like it's kind of like the mixing is still like, I think, creative. I feel like mastering is like that final like okay check, like thumbs up, it's the final stamp of approval. But I think mixing is like the glue it's either makes or breaks the songs. I feel like I always tell people, you can send one song to 5 different top engineers and you're gonna have 5 different songs.
Mixes. Yeah.
Sometimes it's not about good or bad, because I'm talking about if you send them to back in the day with the bigger budgets, like there are stories where a big artist will send it to the 5 engineers or 3 engineers because of what those 3 engineers like do. I always tell people, and a mix engineer, you're not paying them for their equipment or their gear. You're really paying for their ears, for their taste, for their choices.
Their choices.
Yeah, the choices that they make sonically. And so I always try to encourage that. But, in today's society, that's not happening as often. But in terms of you don't have the budget or the capacity to, but to keep that always in mind when you're working with mix engineers, of like, a lot of times people assume mixing is like you send the song and I should just love it the first pass. And it's like, no, this is a conversation. Like it's still like the final phase of like the sonic, like it's in theory, it's forever, I think sometimes modern days, we always can change things and update things, but in the analog world, a lot of commitment was there, which I think helps creators. Yeah, commitment.
The C word.